My priceless past. I love Gladstone because it's the home of my family, the Cirrus, also known as the Daniels family. Our connection to this country is as solid as the ground on which we stand. We are the Tallua tribe. Today I'm an emerging elder in Gladstone, and to me I see my father as the elder. I honour him and his heritage and his connection to his country as we do our ancestors. They are our royalty. To me, he was my father and a role model. His name is Alan George Cirrus. To many, he was known as Mick. He is my priceless past. I want to share his legacy through the eyes of a child. My story of him on his Tallua country. So through my eyes, I've seen the development of change of yesteryears in our beloved town Gladstone. To me, places have story that my dad used to tell us about that are now our footprints. So when I visit these footprints, I can relive the fond memories that my dad had shared with us, with my siblings and myself. This is our priceless past that I would like to share. Be quiet now. You got to tell Daryl to seesaw jokes, and here, you got to be quiet. They're going to record. So now talking. My name is Leeann Downer. I'm in my garden, and I'm in Gladstone. I've lived in Gladstone since 1968, and my family is the Cirrus family. And we came here because Dad had a job in the railway, so we made our way from Rockhampton, because I was born Rockhampton, Barry and I, and we came to Gladstone to live. We are Tallua tribe, and our grandfather was born in Calliope. He was raised in Yarwun. He worked and lived in Mount Larkham before making his way to Gladstone to start a job in the Gladstone Wharf. And yeah, that's our connection to country, and it's as solid as the ground on which we stand here today, Tallua tribe. Our granddad's name was Richard Daniels, because the Cirrus family was also known as the Daniels family years ago. And Richard Daniels, he then met Nan, and she was Martha Walk-on, and they married and they settled here in Gladstone. They had 7 boys here in Gladstone, and they lived at where the West Gladstone School is today, where the mango tree is. And that mango tree is still standing there today. And when Dad would take us to school, he'd often say, "That's where we lived, under the mango tree." But when Dad was 9, his father died, and I always think Nan had to raise the 7 boys on her own. It must have been a huge job for Nan, raising 7 boys. I mean, I've got 1 boy, and yeah, okay. All right. Well, just recently we've just been to Legends of League. It was the South Sea Island All Blacks team, which Dad was captain, and we just celebrated that. It was funny because here we were all getting dressed to go to this do for our fathers who had played football years ago. And, I was thinking that's amazing that where Dad was recognised, for this, he'd done this years ago. And there was photos found, and it was a lovely night. And, there was Mum's brothers and Dad's other brothers. They received awards too. And Uncle Lenny, Uncle Norm, these were all Dad's brothers, and they were all sportsmen, played football and cricket, and And apparently Dad was a front rower. He was a big fella, Dad, and but Dad never ever made a big deal of himself when he was he was just Dad. We didn't know that he was this. He never ever bragged that he was a captain or anything like that. And it was the other night. It was very. Yeah, I thought to myself, this is amazing. He's very quiet, he was too. I think Dad always wanted to come back to Gladstone to live because it was his country. It was where his family were. And so, Mum was a rocky girl, but she came willingly because she knew that this is what Dad wanted. This is where the work was. So we came to Gladstone to live, and we came to Harvey Street and Morley Street. And it was a railway community. They all worked in the railway. And so from the day we arrived, there was these families there, the Smith family, the Williamsons, the Brodies, and there was other families there. And I can always remember that one of them even asked, Sylvia, Mum, you want to come and have a cup of tea? This is when we came down to look at the house that we were getting. And, but yeah, we were blessed. We were blessed with those neighbours, so blessed. And even to the point of my brother even married one of the neighbours. Yeah, they were very kind to us, and we were blessed with those neighbours, yeah. Well, Dad had never had the plants I have, but he had like trees from the bush. Like he'd go and get a tree in a little tiny oak tree, and he got a lily-pilly tree. And he always got cuttings of people, and Aunty Sis would give him cuttings, because Aunty Sis was a gardener too, so it was all about getting cuttings and making, and Dad would have a beautiful garden just from getting cuttings from different people. So, we had banana trees, and he had a huge veggie garden. And I can remember when Gay was born, Dad had a big crop of cabbages that were coming good, and we ate chow mein cabbage for the whole entire time Mum was in hospital. Every night it was a cabbage a different way. So, because Mum was not home, that's what he did. Yeah, so he was a gardener, yeah. I think most trees Dad had, now that I think about it, were from out the scrub. Because, yeah, there wasn't a lot of money to be running around buying plants at nursery, so, Dad would just, even a lily-pilly tree made its way home to our place one day, so, yeah. We had this above-ground round circle pool, which I think most families had, and Dad said, I'm going to plant that lily-pilly tree right here where the water flows over the pool. So that tree grew, it was huge. We would lay in the pool eating those lily-pillies. They were sour, bittery things, but we would lay there and eat those lily-pillies. When we had Christmas, we would have the relations coming from Rocky, the Roberts family, and, we'd have people coming from and Mum and Dad knew that our house wasn't big enough to hold everybody. So Dad would make this bower shed, and he would go out to the bush and chop down all these small skinny logs and make like a pergola here like that. And then he had to get the branches to make the bower shed roof. And we didn't have a ute. So Barry and I would be in the car somewhere in amongst the trees, because Dad had just put trees in everywhere in the car, and we'd come down the street and all you could probably see was this bush travelling down the road, and it was Dad's car full of gum leaves, and you could smell it was always smelt beautiful, this pergola that Dad would make. Dad done this every year, and every year he would say, Mum, I'm adding a bit more on this year, and he would extend it every year. Where we lived, in Harvey Street, behind us was bushland. And there was cattle yards, old cattle yards. There was no cattle there when we moved. And we would play in the cattle yards, the neighbours, and we'd hide and seek and play over the back there. And then if we weren't playing there, we'd be riding on the old dirt road. And the old dirt road now is Phillip Street. And we'd ride up and down there, and we would see, like at the corner there was this old house, beautiful old little Queenslander home, low set, and Mrs. Larson lived there. And we would see her pruning this bougainvillea that she had around her home, and it was never it was always pruned. And we never ever seen her face, but we'd always see the big hat, and we would say, there she is, and she'd always be out there pruning this bougainvillea, yeah. It's been taken out to the Port Curtis Historical Village, and I think they've even tried to recreate the bougainvillea around the home, and I was glad when they saved that house, yeah. Mum and Dad, they were real outdoorsy people, and we would always be doing, like, going fishing, and like Dad, there was no going buying bait, and Barry and I, we'd have to go because it was our job to pick up the bait when Dad threw the net. So we would go pick up the bait, and then when we had enough bait, we were off. The family were off fishing. So we'd go to we'd had all the different spots we'd go to, like there was Black Bank, High Bank, the Clyde River, and then at night Dad would say, oh look, we might go down to the wharf, and Dad would fish all night. We'd be sleeping in the car because Dad he'd just be fishing all night. We were taught to swim in Clyde Creek out at Beecher, so we'd go out there if it had been raining because Dad knew that the water, it'd be flowing down that, and we'd head out there now, and Mum would save a little bit of money so we could stop at the Beecher shop. There was a shop at Beecher, and underneath the house, and we would get ice cream, and the lady would make sugar-coated peanuts, and so that was a real treat for us. And as soon as we finished school, out we'd go. You know, homework was later. Yeah. Well, as I said, we used to go fishing out the wharf there, and they were building the marina now, and it was all just big walls because that's all land that's filled in, and they had to transfer the salt water to the other area, you know. So they had this huge big pipe, and Mum would love telling this story. There was this big pipe, and I used to be, when I wasn't fishing, I was mucking around dancing and whatever, and I was dancing on this pipe. And next minute I fell forward, and Dad grabbed me, and I got in the biggest trouble because the water was just flowing out of there that fast. And Dad said, you could have ended up in China, and chased me to the car, eh? So, yeah, these stories need to be written down, I think, and told, and yeah, so that we don't forget our ancestors, you know. And I get sad when I think about my new grandbabies coming. They won't get to meet my father, eh? So, and yeah, he was a kind man and very, yeah, good.
We're one blood, we're one people. You can trace our family tree all the way through history, back to Adam, back to Eve. We're one blood, we're created in the image of our God, made to worship, made to love. We're one blood.